Great way to wrap up the first week in the existence of this brand new Sirius XM channel volume and the Daily Trunk Nation, live every Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, talking to the great Michael Anthony of Van Halen for a bit here on this Friday.
That's way to end the week.
Yeah, what a way, man. Well, if you're only here, we could open up a couple shots and really break into the weekend, Michael. That would be the way to do it.
Oh, my God. We'll do a couple shots of my hot sauce. That'll start your weekend off.
Well, listen, we're going to get to your hot sauce in a second because I truly have told a lot of people about it, and I truly, truly do love your hot sauce. But picking up where we left off real quick, a few other things I wanted to ask you about Van Halen. You know, what was interesting about that whole thing when Sammy lashed out in the video to Eddie and all that is then what happened shortly afterwards, which touched off a lot of people starting to think that there could be the potential for a reunion because, and it seemed like a very innocent thing, but a lot of people read a lot into it, that on Twitter, I'm sure you heard about this, Sammy and Eddie had a friendly exchange. They wished each other happy birthdays or something. Did you catch any of that?
Well, I do have kind of a little spin on, a personal spin on that one, Eddie. I don't know if I should tell you about it because I don't want to kill anybody's hopes or anything, you know, because actually before Sammy did that, he told me, we were on his jet flying somewhere to do a gig, and he goes, damn it, I'm going to wish Eddie happy birthday. I said, go ahead, man. I mean, what, you know, come on, you know. And so he did, and then I guess Eddie responded back.
Yes, yeah.
He said, I hope you're doing well, and he said, yeah, Sammy, I hope you're doing well also.
Right.
Well, see, the only thing that I was thinking that seemed kind of odd, in all the years that Sammy was in Van Halen and that I had been around him and Eddie never calls him Sammy, always call him Sam.
So you think somebody else was doing the social media?
Eddie's wife is a publicist.
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
well, I know
one
this.
Thing I don't know, but you know what? But it was a nice, friendly gesture. And Sammy has also said, I'm sure you've seen. There's been a couple other interviews that he's done where he says, "I'm sorry, I apologize to Van Halen brothers and whatever." And you know, because all this lashing out and whatever. And Sammy, and I mean, I love Sam to death, but sometimes he puts his foot in his mouth, and especially when it comes to rebuttals to stuff that people say or accuse him of, or Van Halen stuff. The worst thing Sammy can ever do is read shit that people say about him and Van Halen.
Right.
You know, because it does get him fired up. But Sammy has taken a turn now, and he does realize, he goes, hey, you know what? Even if I never play in a band with these guys again, friendship and, as human beings or whatever is more important to me than that. And, he says, he doesn't want to go to the grave with any enemies, so I don't know.
Well, I know, and he reached out to me because he was hot about this whole thing about with the Circle not being able to play Van Halen songs on TV, and he did an interview with me really hammering it. And then he left me a message, which again is private. I'm not going to talk about it on the air because it was off the air. But he left me a message about some stuff with Van Halen that he wanted me to possibly help him out with as far as something with an interview down the line. So, I think that I think you're right. I think that maybe, but I'll tell you, nobody knows what's going on with Van Halen. If Roth is even still in the band, they're so cryptic. We don't know what's going on. So. I want to touch on that. I want to touch on your hot sauce. I want to touch on Chicken Foot and a little bit on the Circle. If you can give me like 10, 15 more minutes, Michael, we just got to do this quick break and we'll come back and pick it up there.
You got it.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. We'll be right back with more Michael Anthony, Trunk Nation on Volume. The Sirius XM headquarters, Trunk Nation, live Monday to Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, 11 a to 1 p. Pacific. A week from Monday, Halloween, the 31st, I'll be doing this show live for a week from Los Angeles, where we are talking now with Michael Anthony of Van Halen. So, Michael, as far as the Van Halen stuff is concerned, where do you see any hope at all for any sort of reunion with yourself and the band? Do you have any interest in it? Do you have any desire? Do you feel there's unfinished business there, or are you over it?
You know what? In some ways, I'm kind of over it, only because, you can only hold your breath for so long. But it's kind of interesting that you say, any unfinished business. It's like, Van Halen being one of the biggest bands there ever was, it's kind of sad to see how everything kind of dwindled down like it did, kind of with a whimper, which this band, if we were going to go out, should have gone out like just killing it all over the world. And, you know, I'm always that never say never guy. You know, if the circumstances were right, I have no problem. I mean, I love going out and playing the music. And, you know, if we did it, though, it would have to be, you know, none of this 4 separate planes and 4 separate this and that, and you only see them on stage. You know, it's got to be kind of like, you know, not. I don't know if it can ever be like a brotherhood like it was before. You know, we used to call it, when Sam was in the band, we used to call ourselves the Four-Headed Monster. But if everybody could get along great, I think it'd just be great to do it for the fans. You know, and as far as Dave goes, I don't know if you know, obviously it would have been great to be on stage with Dave again, because I always liked his silliness on stage anyway.
Well, yeah, well that became well, that
in a way it's kind of comical, you know, but it always made for an interesting show.
Yeah, well, that lies. That's the other question in all of it, is the fact that you now have these 2 factions of Van Halen world. I'm a fan of both. I look at the Hagar and Roth versions of Van Halen as both great bands, but very different bands. To me,
Right.
they're kind of 2 different bands. But for a lot of people who are younger than myself, especially, the Hagar Van Halen is their Van Halen. And I've said this many times. The period of time you guys made records with Sammy, it's not like there was just, maybe one hit and it was kind of a little bit of an anomaly. There's like a dozen huge songs that are outside of the circle playing them, are literally on the shelf, never to be heard live again, of a whole generation's Van Halen.
You'll hear the older Van Halen fans that are, you know, like my age, that grew up with the band, obviously not liking any of Sammy's stuff, because, you know, people go, well, yeah, you know, they still kind of rock, but they became more commercialized and whatever, and which, you know, I don't think we did. You know, obviously they were playing, you know, we had our you know, #1 albums with Sammy and whatever, but I think we were rocking just as hard as with Dave. You know, and you know, you can't be 20 years old your whole life.
Right, and if people really look, if people really look at it,
Daniels like I used to.
but if people really look at it, Michael, people that say that, they forget, like, look what started to happen around the time of 1984 when Roth was still in the band. That album in particular, there's the big introduction of keyboards with Jump
Right.
and I'll Wait. So there was already signs of the band taking a little bit more of a melodic turn, even with Roth. And I think when Sammy came in with his ability as a singer, it just brought a little bit more of that element in. But you still had songs like Pound Cake and Judgment Day and Get Up and all this stuff that was, you know, good enough, that rocked as hard as anything. So people that say that, they don't really have, I don't think, a full understanding of the catalog, and maybe where Van Halen would have went anyway if Roth had even stayed.
Exactly. You know, that's one of those what ifs. You know, you'll never know. I mean, you know, maybe the best thing that could have happened was Dave leaving the band, because maybe the band might have just went the other way from there, you know, and folded then, you know. But I mean, we'll never know. But I mean, yeah, you know, it's a natural progression. We can't be Van Halen 1 our whole career, you know, because, you know, you have to evolve you naturally evolve as a band, you know, and bands that try to stick to what worked for them, you know, they kind of get passed up, you know, because it's just the same old thing over and over, you know.
Yeah, last thing on Van Halen, I've said this many times, and I truly believe it. To me, Van Halen's albums, especially the first 4, to me, top to bottom, untouchable records, are as sacred as how, and will be looked back, if not already, they will be soon, in the same way people look back at Led Zeppelin records, in my opinion, that they are timeless.
Hey, that is. Thank you very much for that comment.
I'm dead serious. I've said that many times. I mean, they are of that stature. They are timeless. They are never not great to hear, production-wise, song-wise, top to bottom, untouchable. And I often wonder, as fans, you know, I'll go back and I'll play Women and Children start to finish, or I'll go back. When was the last time you ever put on an old Van Halen album and listen to it start to finish? Have you done that at any time?
You know what? I do it all the time, and you know, it's really weird. It's really weird, and this doesn't stem from me hoping the band will get back together and tour and whatever. But when I'm home practicing, in fact, this morning I was playing a little while ago, and for some reason I felt I was playing "Everybody Wants Some," and somebody get me a doctor. But I go, I'll hit on one of the albums, and I'll go on it, and I'll go, wow, and I jam to it at home. And I mean,
that's awesome.
I love them all, and it's kind of funny because I'll I can't think of anything right off the top of my head, but maybe I'll pull one of the albums up on my where I'm practicing and go, wow, I don't even remember that song, and then it'll be kind of like, okay, I'm going to learn that song again.
I was going to make a bad joke there. I was going to say the reason why you don't remember is because according to Eddie Van Halen, you didn't have anything to do with it.
Well, maybe I should call Eddie up so he could come over here and teach it to me again. Okay, enough of that.
You
know what? I listen to them all, and and probably the hardest question, or the question that I like to answer the least, if anybody still asks me, is which Van Halen do you like better?
Right.
Because I love it all, man. I love jamming to all of it. I mean, everything, from as simple as Running with the Devil to, some of the Hagar stuff that, I love it all, man.
Outside of the first record, which is just as iconic as it gets, I find myself going to Women and Children a lot from the Roth albums. A song like In a Simple Rhyme on that album, it's just one of the great tracks of all time, and
some
as
good
far
background, some good harmonies on that.
Yeah, who did those? Who did those harmonies?
Well, me, I just screech, so I but and that stuff, and it's the cool thing about the early stuff too is that we didn't have a band that just had one singer that screamed or whatever, and we always, and this is one thing that we always consciously thought of when we wrote. When the early Van Halen songs were being written, or whatever, was where can we stick backgrounds in and harmonies and stuff like that, because we just thought it sounded cool, you know.
Yeah.
To have a lot of that, and not just have Dave screaming and whatever. So, but I love listening to all of it. I love playing all of it. I'm the guy that'll have a couple drinks, and if I'm somewhere, if I go to Vegas, if I go somewhere and I'm sitting there, I'll get up and I'll jam a song or two with the band that's playing.
Well, I just saw an amazing Van Halen tribute band on the Monsters of Rock cruise that I host called Atomic Punks, and they said you got up with them not too long ago and played a song.
Yeah, they've gone through a couple of changes, and I almost am not sure exactly who's in the band now. Obviously Ralph
from Steel Panther.
When I first jammed with him, he was singing with the band, and I got up with him quite a few times. They'd be playing somewhere, and it's kind of funny because I jammed with them once somewhere, and a couple of friends of mine were out in the audience, and they were laughing their heads off after the show, and I'm all, well, what's up? And they go, oh, these guys were standing next to me, and they're going, damn, that bass player looks just like Michael Anthony. They couldn't get over it.
Those guys are good, man. Ralph's not in anymore.
There are a few of them out there, but the Atomic Punks are probably one of the Van Halen tribute bands that I've jammed with that really do the material justice.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to see that. Let me hit you with a couple other things, and I'll let you go.